Paul George is coming back to the Thunder. So is Jerami Grant. What about Carmelo Anthony? Get these answers, or at least some discussion, with the man who's on top of things, Eric Horn, who covers the Thunder around the clock for the Oklahoman and NewsOK.com. Good morning, Eric. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Saturday night, or was it Sunday morning, an emergency edition of the Thunder Buddies podcast emerged. Out there where you find your typical podcast, you and Brett Dawson rocked through 58 minutes of discussion as a lot happened this weekend for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, a big day for the Thunder on Saturday, getting Paul George to come back on a long-term extension, 4 years, fourth year being a player option. And in the middle of that, the opportunity to extend them even further with a Supermax deal. So, you know, that's a big victory for the Thunder. That's what they always wanted to do with Paul. That was the gamble they made last year, going for that trade, trading Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis, even when it seemed like Paul George is going to be going to the Lakers. And again, Jerami Grant back is, something that's going to make the Thunder very expensive. But at the same time, it makes them a stronger team as well because Grant's a young piece at the power forward position.
You mentioned the deal, 4 years, 3 years of the player option on that fourth year. Is that perhaps one of the more surprising aspects of this?
Yeah, absolutely, because you always, you had the thought that Paul George, if he did come back to Oklahoma City, would do it on a shorter-term deal with options to, become a free agent again in a year or 2 years, because, basically if he did a 2-year guaranteed deal, he'd have the option to go back into free agency with 10 years of service, which would make him eligible for a higher first-year salary. But, it's a testament to the impression that the Thunder made on Paul George throughout the past year and, his belief that he and Russell Westbrook can be a good tandem.
You can read Eric Horn's coverage in today's editions, the Monday, July 1st edition, July 2nd, I should say, of the Oklahoman. The headline finds continuity, comfort in Oklahoma City, talking about Paul George. One thing you just hit on there, Russell Westbrook. Does this say a lot about his relationship, Paul George's relationship, friendship with Russell Westbrook, and the fact that apparently he didn't meet with the Los Angeles Lakers?
Yeah, I think it says a lot. It was expected that Paul George, and most free agents at least take meetings with a couple of different teams to give themselves options and some differentiation in terms of teams and giving them the opportunity to show what they can do. The Lakers had planned on this with Magic Johnson leading the way, and we're going to try and make their best pitch to Paul George. They had every intention of getting this guy in free agency, and that's why they kind of balked at trades last year when they could have had a trade with the Indiana Pacers. So for the Thunder to be able to pull this off in a year is pretty remarkable, considering how much momentum was built up for George going to the Lakers last season.
You mentioned Sam Presti and the fact he took a gamble, a risk on trading Oladipo to get a Paul George. The past couple summers, the question was, will Russ re-sign? What will Paul George do? But now for the foreseeable future, the next couple seasons, you have a little bit of stability there with Russ, with Paul George, and with Steven Adams. And I guess Jerami Grant now too.
Yeah, and that's what Presti's basically been looking for the past 2 or 3 seasons since Kevin Durant left in 2016. After year one, Russell Westbrook bought him a little bit of time by signing the extension. After year two, Westbrook, signed the long-term deal, and they also got Paul George in the summer before Westbrook signed. But having Paul and Russell kind of aligning in terms of their contracts, and then having Steven Adams on board as well, it gives them kind of a core to build around, as opposed to the question marks they face with just Russell Westbrook and Steven Adams.
Well, I mentioned Carmelo Anthony off the top. And again, the Thunder Buddies podcast, which you can find wherever you find your podcasts, including off of NewsOK.com. You and Brett Dawson dive in deep on all things Thunder, including Carmelo Anthony. But for those watching this video, Eric, give us a recap of what fans or people who follow the Thunder in general might expect out of Carmelo Anthony's situation and what might happen there.
Well, he's scheduled to make $27.9 million this year. and that's a hefty price for a guy who, isn't particularly an efficient shooter and really struggles defensively at his age, being 34 years old. So the question is the Thunder going to be willing to pay that, particularly with how Carmelo Anthony left in his exit interview, saying that he wasn't comfortable coming back in the same role that he had last season? And are they going to be willing to pay the massive taxes that come along with having Carmelo Anthony on the roster? This roster is currently constructed before even going out and getting a mid-level free agent, which is all they can afford, or signing their rookie draftees. It's looking at a tax bill of around $125–130 million. That will be the most expensive team in NBA history. It will be the most expensive team in NBA history that basically, isn't a great team. It's a team that didn't get out of the first round last year. So the Thunder can save around or close to $100 million by basically stretching out Carmelo Anthony's final year of his deal. And it's not to say that Carmelo Anthony isn't somebody that can be a valuable asset to the Thunder. It's just a matter of how much they value what he brings or what he can bring or what role they think that he's willing to play, as opposed to the taxes they're going to have to pay for that role. So it's kind of a balance. They have to sit down with him. They have to figure out what the pros and cons are of him coming back. And then they have to weigh if they're willing to pay that massive bill for what could be a team that's basically just a first-round exit waiting to happen.
Was last year, falling out in the first round of the playoffs to Utah. Eric, a couple things looking forward to this summer, looking forward through the summer. Summer League starts in Vegas next week, I believe. Any news on Andre Roberson?
Oh, well, Andre's going to be going through his rehab. I mean, he's not expected to play in Summer League. He hasn't played there in, probably since his rookie year. So, but he's a guy who, coming off of that ruptured patellar tendon, the Thunder thinks he's on pace to be ready for the start of the regular season. Robertson's told me before that he expects to be ready for the start of the regular season. You can be ready for the start of the regular season, but the question is, at what capacity are you going to be able to go? He had basically a knee scope in the off season to kind of to correct some swelling that was going on in that knee. And at that time, the Thunder said that it looked healthy. It looked like the healing process was going well. But that's just another procedure in the off season to add on top of the procedure he had to repair his ruptured patellar tendon. So there's no telling what Robertson's going to be like when he gets back. The Thunder would love to have him back in the starting lineup. They had one of the best starting lineups in the league when he was around. So I think the Thunder needs to plan accordingly. I think a guy to watch in Summer League is Devin Hall, the kid that they drafted from the University of Virginia. He was a 4-year player there. He's about 6'5". He can defend. He comes from a great defensive system in Virginia, and he offers that versatility that Robertson brought to the Thunder so well. I mean, obviously he's not going to be the defender that Robertson is coming out of college, and there aren't many defenders like Robertson in the NBA. But I think that that's a guy who might be able to make this roster because the Thunder's going to need more wing help because there's some uncertainty around Robertson's recovery.
Good stuff as always. Every time Eric Horn, Brett Dawson, the crew from the Oklahoman does their reporting on the Thunder, it's in-depth quality stuff. One final thing, Eric, on Saturday's announcement of Paul George coming back to the Thunder, would you have ever expected a house party in Arcadia for a big announcement? With Nas, no less.
This has been, in the past calendar year, the year of parties for the Thunder, apparently. I mean, they started this thing off when Paul George got to town by having a party for him downtown at the Jones Assembly. They end up having this party in Arcadia with Nas there to kind of kick off, the next era of Thunder basketball, so to speak. So these guys are partying hard. When the news of the party kind of started leaking out earlier last week, it was kind of suspicious, and it made you perk up and think, the Thunder is a team that kind of moves in silence, and when something usually happens in regard to the Thunder, it's usually right before it happens. You don't get word of it, weeks in advance or months in advance. So when the news of the party started circulating and sources started kind of giving us hints to that, it started to become an indication that something big was happening. I mean, I don't think we could have anticipated that Paul George was going to sign long term, but it really kind of it was really kind of a beacon that the Thunder had a pretty good indication that Paul George is coming back.
Indeed he is. Paul George with a 4-year contract with the Thunder, 3 years, the player option on the 4th year. Jerami Grant re-inks as well. More Thunder coverage can be found every day or as needed in the Oklahoman everyday source on newsok.com, and you can follow Eric online, Twitter, Eric Horn OK. Eric, as always, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, Dave.